Are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not. Hi there, and welcome to Better Than Not, the podcast that aims to capture shifting perspectives and thought-provoking ideas in conversation, based loosely on my series, A Changing Frame of Reference, which you can read on the Substack app, and I hope you will. I'm your host, Doug Gardam, and today I'm pleased to welcome back, first time on video, Aman Azad. Aman, how are you?
I'm doing great, Doug. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us today. Aman has been on before. Aman is the CMO and founder of AMG Analytics. He's also got interests in, which is a marketing company. He also has interest in, I'll say, the real estate world. And much of our conversations in previous episodes has been around artificial intelligence or AI. But in the most recent, he talked about AI being a potential solution for, shall we say, our crisis in housing, healthcare, and food, which I had not heard before, and I found it was a fascinating conversation. But also, we scheduled this particular episode especially to follow the American election that happened on Tuesday. There's a lot of things that have been kind of in the air. Many people have called it a crazy election, but I sometimes wonder when you kind of go back in history, and you look at Dewey and Truman, where they literally announced the wrong president early back after the war in the 40s. And I think one of the things that I was most concerned about, and we'll talk about the polarization and all the things that kind of went on, but one of the things I was most concerned about was we were not going to get a result. Recently here in British Columbia, we've gone through an election which that actually happened. And I think that causes a lot more kind of consternation within the population than almost anything else. But that wasn't the case. And I think the time they did that was Gore and Bush back in 2000. And so that wasn't the case. It seemed to be quite decisive. And away we go. Aman. Well, you're excited about a lot of the things, I think, too, that are kind of going on. So it's like, I do think it was important that it was a decisive victory.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And thanks for that introduction. I think, understanding for the audience, my title being a CMO, it's a Chief Marketing Officer. It just to backtrack a little bit to give some context. Yes. As a CMO, basically, you're kind of overseeing all strategy and all reach in the marketing world for companies, corporations, or even individuals that are higher profile, and any entity that's requiring marketing or employs marketing services. So that's my trade. I'm the founder of AMG Analytics. So yes, it's a marketing company, but at the same time, it's very much centered around technology, and a lot of artificial intelligence discussions and white papers and content come out of our company. So that is a natural part of discourse for me, and I'm very much involved in that side of things. And you mentioned
before you go too far there, how long has this AI been kind of upon you? Like we're kind of hearing a lot in the news now, but this isn't necessarily something that's just suddenly come on. Like how long has this been kind of in part of what you do?
So the first article I think I wrote on it would have been in 2020 or 2021, maybe.
Oh, that's almost 5 years ago.
Yeah. Now when you think about it, it's like, oh, that's a number of years ago. It really kind of exploded over the COVID years, right? Like that was when people really started discussing that, because we kind of blew open conversation around technology at that time. Be it we were kind of idle and we started looking into lots of things, but to discuss, but also because it was it was starting to make its presence known in different industries, and we started to notice that too. So I think one of my first articles I wrote was probably around there. I sensed it coming into play. I sensed where it could potentially go originally from the real estate world.
Mm.
And just to recap that, my background's also in real estate. So I kind of, if you take three spheres, you take the marketing sphere, you take the technology sphere, and you take the real estate sphere, and you kind of do a Venn diagram of the
Right.
three. The intersection of that is kind of where my wheelhouse is. So kind of that kind of brings us to where our last conversation was in the podcast
Yes.
last time, and it was around real estate needs, but then so housing, and it was around food, it was around
Healthcare.
healthcare. Yes. So these three kind of pillars, but all of those kind of come from that intersection for me, and a deeper discussion of what AI, which is the biggest trending technology we have at the forefront right now, can do for those kind of sectors.
Well, you were
And so,
one of the first people I remember even hearing bringing AI into like those particular areas. I mean, those are huge issues in our society world today.
yeah,
Many would use the word crisis behind them, but we
right.
still in this country have it pretty, I'd say pretty good. But you were the first that I'd heard say that AI had potential of giving us solutions for
Yeah.
those.
So yeah, AI, like any technology, can be used for something that we perceive as good, or it can be used for something that could be misused and create more division or more problems,
Mm-hmm.
and a bigger gap, so to speak, between the haves and have-nots, right? So if we look
Yep.
at it in that way, so it can be used or misused, and it really comes down to what the kind of like what legislation looks like around it, or what the
Mm-hmm.
rules and guidelines are. What purpose funding goes towards, and who's funding these things like that. These kind of things all play as a factor into this. And so with AI, originally in the earlier times, everything I was writing about, or everything I would talk about, was this is Pandora's box.
Mm.
We're opening it, and we're going to be in big trouble. And once everything becomes AI sourced and we become obsolete, the whole pathway for AI is to achieve efficiency or maximum efficiency. And if that's the case, we're the cumbersome ones in the way.
Right.
So
Right.
that is the threat. It's an existential threat for sure.
Yep.
And many people in this space would acknowledge that, at least, if not say that is
Mm-hmm.
their truth. But
Mm-hmm.
it can also, on the flip side of things, can we use it to our advantage? Yes, absolutely. That's what our goal is, at least for those that are responsible in terms of governance. That should be the goal. And so when we look at the crises that we have, or the bigger issues that we have as a society in this country and others and around the globe, let's say, we should be looking at technology to help and improve
Right.
those things. We have the resources. We clearly have the technology. We just need the governance around it to make sure that it is beneficial, not detrimental.
Right. Right.
So that was kind of a no-brainer for me to say, hey, how do we shift the technology that exists towards creating an advantage for everybody with it?
Right.
And that's why those three pillars, which if you really break it down, housing is like, it's the food, shelter, and we say clothing, but then on top of that, we've got our medical, covered in that,
Mm-hmm.
in those pillars. So we certainly can use technology, be it AI or other technology, augmented reality, virtual reality, anything else we have at our disposal, and anything we're developing. We certainly can use that to our advantage to help solve these problems. Whether or not those are the focal point,
Mm.
that's to be decided as a society or by our governors, so to speak.
Right. And that, to me, those are like, when you brought those out, to me it was like, why aren't we hearing more about that? But then subsequent to you talking to me, I talked to a young doctor here, and he was actually kind of explaining to me how we don't always know how to use it, but a lot of it's available. And one of the things that I love that he explained was how it's like a laptop that was set up that allowed him, it would chart and do the things that normally they're doing in front of the patient and
Hmm.
not looking at the patient. And he said, what it enables you to do is to have that discourse with the patient while your work is still going on. And it's
Right.
like, I thought that was like, that's a huge benefit for many people. Because again, on another conversation, another doctor said a lot of times we see patients, and an extension of that time is just for someone to talk to.
Hmm.
Like having that communication with someone to have a better understanding. Like, yeah, sure, we want to know what's wrong with us, but there's also this human connection
Right.
that we would like to know a little bit more about too, right?
Right. Yeah. There's the subtle nuances of communication with a person face to face to know that it's going to be okay, or should I be
Yes.
worrying more, more
Right,
than I
right.
am? You have to be able to take those cues, and you can't do that with just written material or reports and things like that. Having that face to face with a trusted doctor, maybe somebody you have had as a doctor for a long time, that rapport, you're able to kind of feel that comfort or know
Hmm.
that, hey, I need to change something here, and he's serious or she's serious about this, so
Right,
I need to
right.
really do it. Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about the that kind of automated note taking or charting, that could very well be using AI. It very well could be using other forms of technology as well. But the kind of combination of all these different forms of technology are limitless in terms of what we can output. And so for a doctor, can you imagine? We have a shortage of doctors. We have
Hmm.
it's. I mean, if you go to any local hospital, I'm going to say anywhere in the major urban areas of Canada, especially in the U.S. U.S. is privatized, but very similar. But in Canada, mostly, if you go there, you're waiting 13, 14 hours before you can get a
Yes.
hospital bed or get the proper help at a hospital, which is emergent, right? In most
Yes.
cases.
Yep.
But in this case, you can imagine bringing more doctors into the mix is a lot harder to do because the barrier of entry or barriers of entry are
Okay.
formal education, specialization, 7 years, 10 years of prep.
Yep.
Um, your all of the things you have to go through to actually be able to be a doctor in the hospital or in a clinic or wherever. Instead, we can use technology to do, which is far easier and cheaper at the moment, would be to leverage the time for each doctor. In this
Right.
case, charting and,
Yep.
and, and the manual work that gets done automatically leverages the technology to increase the amount of time available for that doctor to see more patients and faster. So we have innovative ways to attempt to solve a lot of these problems, or at least bridge the gap for a lot of these problems until we can
Yep.
correctively fix the whole system. And that should be a focal point for
Well,
our leadership.
yeah, I mean, I would like to think that's becoming that. This could actually turn us into talking about the election because of the technology that's kind of connected
Yeah.
with what I'll say kind of being represented by the whole thing, because it's I don't want to. It wasn't a technology election, but there is a lot of technology upon us, and the will to use it in a you kind of used it before in a more positive sense to improve rather than to take away, and
Mhm.
how that kind of brings that out. Because like I said, one of my biggest concerns with the election was not knowing. Like, I kind of went to bed on Tuesday night. I know I live in Canada. I mean, it's like I don't get to vote, but
Yeah.
it's like that election affects the world.
Yeah.
And now when you start pulling together like the AI part of it, I mean, you're looking at, we've got driverless cars to voice activation things on our phones,
Yeah.
that like I just discovered the other night. I'm in notes on my phone and I pressed something inadvertently, and everything that was in the conversation going on, it was writing in my notes,
Yeah.
like verbatim. Like, and I'm kind of going like, that's available in my hands. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy that it comes just with my phone. But go back to the election, and I mean, now even hearing today the connections that are going on with, I mean, obviously one of the technological leaders we hear about with SpaceX and we hear with Tesla and driverless cars is Elon Musk.
Mhm.
But with this election now going on, what do you think's going to take place now that this is like this has been given the mandate, right?
This has become reality. Yeah. Uh, when we talk about the election, and that is again one of the reasons why this episode was scheduled after the election,
Yeah.
because I had a feeling that Trump was going to win. I
Okay.
wasn't sure because there's
Well,
so
no
much
one is.
rhetoric. Yeah, I mean, in my own mind, I wasn't sure because of all of the rhetoric around 2020.
Mm,
And just the divide. The idea of, like you mentioned, certain states saying that, oh, it'll take weeks for us to count up the votes. And we already, as a nation, the United States is very politically divided. It's a very kind of very split and very much evenly so, as it would seem, on paper, let's say.
Yep.
But it was a resounding victory for Republicans. It was what we would probably call a red wave, because you ended up with, Trump potentially. Nevada and Arizona are still being tallied now. I think Nevada's pretty close to being done. I think they're in their 93% or something like that counted. I mean, that's 6 electoral votes for Trump right there. He's sitting at 292. So, or 290, 297. Yeah. So he'll be at 303. And if he gets Arizona, which I think he's a couple of points high above on Arizona, I mean, he's going to end up with 312 electoral votes. And that's pretty much domination. I mean, and also the popular vote. And the other big thing is he got the Senate, right? So the Republicans took the majority in the Senate, and they're on track right now to get the majority in the House. This is setting up to be what would be considered, we would consider this like a super majority. So there's the other side of things where the worry is, okay, now we have Donald Trump with full power. And so you have a lot of people who are concerned about that. Me personally, I actually am pleased with the results of the election. Sorry. And I have a particular viewpoint of Donald Trump, and I have a very particular viewpoint of the party platforms on both sides, right? So how the Democrats ran this election was lackluster in my opinion. I think there were so many things they missed, so many things they did wrong. I think there was a blunder with the transition between Biden and Harris. I don't think that was a very smart move. I don't think that was done.
Very sudden.
Yeah, I mean, the decline in Joe Biden was very apparent. Anyone that was saying that it wasn't, including Kamala Harris, who was saying that he had all his faculties. His faculties may be there from time to time, but overall, we've seen way too much of a decline very quickly.
Right.
They should have replaced him, or he himself should have stepped down a lot earlier. And I personally think for Democrats, they should have probably leaned into somebody like Josh Shapiro out of Pennsylvania instead of Kamala Harris. I think Kamala Harris has to wear on her sleeve her track record, and Joe Biden's track record for that matter, for the last 4 years. And if we look at the numbers, if we look at everything statistically, it's been a very poor administration. They have not run the country well at all. Whether you're a fan or not a fan of the Democrats, you have to call a spade a spade. They did not do a good job with the country. The country is in pretty bad shape. On key markers. Okay. Moving forward, Donald Trump has a platform, and on his platform, his policies are all to correct those measures. The biggest thing about Trump, though, is in 2016, for 4 years, he ran the country. He ran the country on very similar policy, and the country did quite well. We can statistically look at that. He did quite well. Now, for me, that's what was going to work for Trump. I thought he's going to win because he's got the track record and she does not. But again, it was a very close race in every state. But each state, as we could see, almost every state, that the blue wall, for example, was knocked down. That all went red. He flipped Pennsylvania, which was huge. And in the Senate, we've got, I think Pennsylvania, the senator's Republican now. That's been flipped, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a lot of that going on.
Yes.
I think people are starting to look at a potential unity amidst all this kind of divisiveness.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a good thing. And when Trump delivered his acceptance, or I guess it's his winning speech, not his acceptance speech, whatever it is his victory lap speech. Right. Yeah, I think it was 2:30 or something in the morning where they were. And he's 78 years old. So he's did 901 rallies. Okay. And he's up there doing a speech at 2:30 in the morning. So, and he's got a bunch of people on his team there. And I think he started to realize, as opposed to how he did things in the first term, this time around, he said, I need a trusted team around me with expertise. And common sense, and all buying into the America First
Hmm. Hmm.
agenda.
Hmm.
I don't see anything wrong with that if you're the leader of a nation, that you want to make your country
Yes,
good,
absolutely.
strong, right? Of
Yep.
course. So I'm a fan of that. And I mean, on the real estate side, just I should say, I studied Donald Trump since I've studied Donald Trump for 25 years
Art of
in
the
business.
deal.
Art of the Deal, yeah, that was a big one. So, and the Art of the Comeback, right? I really
Yeah.
like that one too. But he's done lots of things. He's done lots of incredible things in business. As a person, like personality wise, he's very polarizing. Okay,
Yes.
either
Yes.
people love him or
Absolutely.
they hate him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he's calmed down a lot of his rhetoric over the last couple of years. I think 2020 really helped him do that.
Did you hear him on the Rogan podcast?
I did. Yeah, he's much more personable.
I was going to say this is one of the things that I thought was a very interesting perspective. Is he wasn't in front of a crowd then, a large crowd. He's sitting there literally in front of Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
Rogan was not easy on him.
No,
Like he was not looking at him as a worshiper. He was looking at him as an equal.
it's
And
funny you say that, because if the way I saw it was Trump was admiring Joe Rogan.
it's true.
He's
It was
right.
really interesting how that was
And
kind of going
and
on.
this is the thing about Trump too. And again, I like Donald Trump. I'm sorry, some people may disagree with me, and
Mm,
that's fine. We all have the right to agree or disagree, and that's fine. I like Donald Trump. Um, I don't like some of the things he says.
yes. Yeah.
I think his communication style is very different. He talks about his weaving. He weaves in and out
Yes.
and whatever.
Yes.
And yeah,
Yes.
he certainly does. But his communication style is very different. Um, it's not as polished as I would like it to be. But then again, he says things that he means. He exaggerates a little bit. He does all these things, but he's a character. But at the same time, you got to look at his actions. And I think
Hmm.
his
Yes.
policies speak louder than the way he communicates. If you look at his running mate, the new vice president to
Yes.
be is JD
JD
Vance. I
Vance.
really
Yeah.
like JD Vance. I think his communication is super effective. I think he's a far better communicator than Donald Trump is.
Mm,
But again, it's because he believes the policies, and it's all about policies with Trump. So Trump
yeah.
is a no nonsense guy, and he'll call out whatever he does. But at the same time, he stands by his policies, and his words in his acceptance speech or his victory speech was promises made, promises kept. Right, that
Hmm.
was the big thing he
Yes. Yeah.
said. And so on Joe Rogan's podcast, you got to see kind of the person,
Yes.
right, is a little
Yes.
softer. Is the one on one, and Joe Rogan is a consummate professional, right? Like he
Hmm.
is so wants to know the truth about everything, so he
Yep.
won't go easy on people,
No. And
right?
that's what I thought was a very interesting way of, like, I haven't listened to the whole thing, but I thought it was very interesting to see that almost personal one-to-one discussion on, like, you would have over a coffee talking about, because I mean, this at that time, this is the potential next president of the United States, right?
Mm-hmm,
It's a
mm-hmm.
very powerful role, um, even when you're looking at it from a podcaster role. But it
Right.
was, to me, it was just, you got a whole different side than, I'll call it, the media side that we're constantly kind of hearing and seeing about.
Yeah. Well, now if you're mentioning the media, I mean, the media's function in politics and in elections in particular
Oh,
really kind of bleed into the marketing world. It's very similar. Like they're
yep.
kind of one and the same. So in marketing, in the marketing world that I can speak on, a lot of it is public relations. It's crisis intervention, like fixing problems and kind of spin. Okay, so
Yep.
with marketing, you're doing a lot of fixing. With marketing, you're doing a lot of programming. Like these are things that most marketers don't want to talk about because it's kind of the darker world of what we have to do. So we're given a task, trying to make something popular or something
Yeah.
viral, or you're trying to get buy-in on an idea, whether it's a political party or whether it's a company or a product, whatever it is, a service. The whole marketing thing is about spin. It's about value. It's about benefit to you as a consumer. That whole thing.
It's
You look
hugely
at
psychological. Like, I'm kind of,
it's almost all psychological.
it's kind of like when you think of people coming out of, like, with their degrees in psychology and things like that, the
Yeah.
marketing world is an obvious place that you
Yes.
kind of head, right? Because it's
Yeah. Well,
like,
my undergrad was in sociology, so it
ah,
makes sense, right?
yes,
But
absolutely.
it is absolutely what you said. it's a very psychological game. In fact, I think it's probably 99% psychology.
It's fascinating.
And
That part of it's fascinating to me, Amon, because it's like, um, how do we think? And we don't always think the way we think, right? Like that's the part that catches us in really bizarre
right.
fashion, right?
And we study psychology and all of kind of the key players in that world that have contributed to ideas, and those ideas have then become strategies. And those strategies are things that we employ now today based on the work of these authors, these researchers, these sociologists or these psychologists of that time.
Yeah.
So we still employ all of that. The thing is if you look at politics and you look at, in particular, election campaigns, you have to have not a marketer per se, but you have to have campaign managers. And these campaign managers have to rely on that type of strategy because you're dealing with the masses, right? So manipulation is a tool there. Okay. You have to create groups. So you have to have that idea of camaraderie and belonging. It's just like we talked about on a podcast before about sports. You build your home team. You have to have buy-in from your fan base. So it's the same idea. This is all psychology. You're right. And so from a marketing standpoint, these are principles that have bled over into our world. And then you have advertising as a tool, okay? Paid advertising, which is very much demographic based. We really get down to the nitty gritty science part of it to figure out, what's working, what's not working, what's converting, what's not converting. These little things are so used so predominantly in social media when it comes to politics and creating that type of in this case, in America's case, and others too, that kind of split, that divisive kind of either you're this group or you're that group. It becomes so much easier to market to or to spin to when you create a group and have an identity around it and get people to start buying into it. That's also another way that you can enact things like mass formation psychosis and all of these different control things, right? And that's a very dangerous way to use the technology that we have.
Well, I'm kind of stunned often by how powerful it is to you see people in the media that you're convinced you know who they are, and you've never met them. That's the power to me of it. And then you're shocked when they do something that. Well, I know them. They would never do that.
Right. Well, what's the best example we have kind of in our Western world is Hollywood. Hollywood is the perfect example of this because, again, and I was just talking to somebody earlier today about this too. They were talking about Adele, the
singer,
the artist. Yeah. The singer, the artist. And me personally, I think she's got a tremendous voice. I think she's a tremendous artist. I don't know her personally.
Not at all.
So could I comment on what she's like as a person? No, I don't know her. Maybe some things I would see on social media about how she interacts with certain people might make me perceive that she's a wonderful person. I just don't know her, right?
Right.
However, it is the marketing spin, the PR part of it all that creates that where you know this person. This person is like, you can relate to this person. And because we get mixed up with, and some people may disagree with this, but again, opinion here, but also kind of my area of study, but we tend to take the things we like about this person. Let's use Adele as an example.
Yep.
Adele, I think Adele is one of the greatest talents in singing that we have. I think she's amazing right now. But I would be able to compartmentalize her talent and her work and say, she's an amazing talent. Okay. She can sing wonderfully. She can perform wonderfully on stage. Her music, I like some of it. I like some of her recorded works. Right. They're great. Her performances, great. Sure. Her alone, like just her, Adele, I don't know her as a person. So I cannot say that I idolize her or I put her up on a pedestal to say, she's just fantastic. Oh, I love Adele. I can't say that. I'm talking about her talent and I'm talking about her music because that I can critique. Her as a person, I cannot critique because I don't know her personally. So the whole game here for us marketers, if we're trying to build and sell you a reputation, right? A brand is to give you that feeling that you know this person.
Amazing.
So now you are going to buy tickets for this person's
Yep.
shows. You're going to buy albums. You're going to do whatever you're going to do, or downloads, whatever it is. And then you're going to, when that person speaks now at something that's as relevant as a political campaign,
Yep.
you're going to be a part
absolutely.
of that.
Yep.
Because you have already bought in to say, I know this person. And you see,
Yep.
so again, psychology is a massive part of this. And that's why with the Democrats, you saw all of these Hollywood stars and music stars come out and perform at all these rallies. And you barely saw that with the Republican side. It wasn't as much.
No, I was going to say, when you say that, like I'm not paying attention to it that much, to be really honest with you. But the only person that I can remember on the Republican side was Musk.
Yeah, and he's become a personality because so Elon Musk is such an interesting guy. I don't think that any one of us can really encapsulate his essence in any like meaningful way, other than to say he's done great with X. He's done like for freedom of speech.
Yes.
He's done Twitter, former Twitter. He's done great with SpaceX because there's some massive levels of innovation that he's doing there that no one else has come close to. And it's funny because Donald Trump keeps on talking about the way that he's been able to like reuse the rocket. He's marveling in it, and rightfully so. It's fantastic. Nobody else has that technology. Yeah. So again, that's Elon Musk, and he's I mean, no one talks about his boring company that he's building tunnels and doing all this stuff, especially in Las Vegas. Like that technology that he's talking about there is phenomenal, but we don't talk about that. And then of course, Neuralink, which when it's used correctly for people who have spinal cord injuries or sight or other issues or anything like that, and it's restorative, I think that's fantastic. That's phenomenal. Beyond that, I don't know. Right. Yeah. So we have to see where the reins are here.
Well, this is your dark side you mentioned earlier on. There's always the other side, right?
Yeah. So you give somebody unlimited power that has the ability to take technology to a realm that we can't even imagine. We don't really know where he's going to take it. No. But it seems to me with Elon Musk so far, I'm not putting him up on a pedestal and saying he's he's an idol or anything like that. We can't do that. I don't know him personally. You get to know people in terms of what they believe, if they're being honest in interviews and things like that. So you can glean some information from there, but you certainly don't know what they're like in every situation. However, you can just base it on what actions they've done. And I think one of the biggest things that I can take away from Elon Musk here, his actions, is spending $44 billion to buy Twitter and breaking it apart, gutting it, and turning it into X. And X now is the number one news platform online in Canada and the US. And I don't know where it ranks around the world, but if it's not number one, it's got to be up there.
No,
and
that is news for me today. I did not know that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is. And especially during this election run here, it was the number one news source online. So he's done what no one else has really done. And he's taken that platform and made free speech front and center again. And he said, if it costs $44 billion for free speech, I don't care. He doesn't care about advertisers. He doesn't care about anything. He's done interviews where he's shot everything down to say free speech is number one. We can't have a society in capitalism if we don't have free speech.
Well, it's part of democracy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the front runner for democracy. You can't have democracy if you don't have free speech either. How can you silence, information and ban information, stop information? He's keeping X open and running for that very purpose, to have information free.
What's interesting with the free speech is the fact that when someone says something that you don't agree with, you people get into that sense that, well, you shouldn't be allowed to do that then. And that's the problem with understanding, because it's wide open. That it's giving you that freedom, and what happens is we tend to, I think this is George Orwell somewhere along, we tend to identify with things easier if we agree with them.
100%. That's our.
And if we don't, and this is why I thought the election was so interesting, right? Because in some of the things that you hear, you kind of agree with. Oh, I think that way. That's what I'm kind of doing. And suddenly that fits into kind of your persona and relationship to that personality, right?
Right. And that's on both on the left and the right.
That's the part that it's both, it comes back and forth, right? And I think that how that is, well, the psychological part of the marketing that brings that forward is just brilliant to me, because it's like, it gives you
Yeah.
that feeling like you're there.
Yeah. And that's, you know what, if we took that out of politics, that's what we do in the marketing world in every campaign, whether it's for
Yes.
shoes or whether it's for, tickets to something or whatever it might be. It's that same idea, just on a grander scale. And I hate to say that because it is a form of manipulation.
Oh,
It really is. And I think for me, and this is just kind of a personal note, I've been, actually been talking to a few people about this lately too, is I'm at that point where I want to look at something that is more kind of congruent with my beliefs in terms of like honesty and
right.
integrity.
Yeah.
I turn down working with certain businesses where I don't believe in what they're selling or doing, because it's going to need a lot of manipulation to sell it,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah,
I,
absolutely. This is
I think
integrity. That's
integrity, yeah,
integrity.
I think
Yeah.
integrity is starting to become more of an important piece here, as the process of marketing, the process of persuasion, the process of public relations, and all of these things start to progress, and we have more tools, like especially with AI now, and the platforms like social media and everything. The more we have this technology, and the more efficient it is, the faster it is, the faster the results are that we get, the faster the results become apparent. The more responsibility we should have in terms of keeping integrity in place.
Yes.
And I'm starting to wrestle with that a lot, because it's getting to the point where um, it's like a science, where it's like, okay, I can sell any product or any service or any idea. I just need the right manipulation tools.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So this goes back, Doug, to what we were talking about in terms of leadership and governance, right? So
Yes.
if we step back from like my world, where I'm working with corporations and let's say athletes or developers or anything, whatever it might be, and we step back into the public sphere and talk about housing and talk about healthcare, talk about
Hmm.
food. Food is going to be a big one. Included in food is water, by the way. So this is going to be a very
Yes.
big thing
Yes.
going in the
Yeah.
future, right? So if we look at trying to keep integrity in that discussion,
Hmm.
we're going to limit the amount of manipulation, I think. And we need proper leadership to
Hmm.
uphold that
Yes.
integrity. And when
Yes.
we do that, that's when you start to see, well, if we have the right leadership in place to look at these things that are super important to our society, and we really need to do something here to prop each one of those sectors up.
Right.
And we need to allocate resources for the technology that can help us drastically with these things. We also have to maintain integrity in terms of how we roll that out, right?
Yes.
We're not
Yep.
trying to manipulate. We're trying to create awareness. Number one, we need enough information going out there for the public to be able to be informed enough that they can have a valid opinion in the matter. The
Right.
worst thing that I see all the time when it comes to politics is when I talk to people and they say, I don't know. I don't know who to vote for. I don't know who's going to do what. Who's even running? Like,
Yeah.
I get all those kind of
Disinterest.
answers. Yeah, yeah, or just disinterest, dismissiveness. Just
Yeah.
like, oh, my vote won't count. My vote, nothing. I don't care. I don't know who. These are decision makers for you, right? Like,
Right.
you have to
Right.
have input for this. This is how it works, and so you need to be informed. You need to be informed enough, not just, oh, this is a good person to vote for. That's a bad person. They said this. Like those are picking sides based on personality is the way we went off incorrectly in the political
So
world.
when you go historically right back to Nixon and Kennedy, like with that
Mm.
kind of thing, that was one of the first times that I think in history, like I don't think I saw it, but I think that people go back to say that Nixon sweated, he had a dark shadow,
Hmm.
and like his face, he
Yep.
didn't
On the
exhibit.
debate, you're speaking about
Yes,
the debate,
yeah,
yeah,
this
in
particular
black and
one,
white.
you can go to YouTube and look
I've
at
seen it.
it,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's like I think we've always been like this, like, but
where we characterize people as good people, bad people,
what
good
they
versus
look
bad.
like, how they
Yeah,
talk, the different things that,
yeah.
and to me, this is where when you say about technology and in a way, even AI, like I go back to, as an example, Wikipedia. When
Hmm.
Wikipedia first came out, everybody just kind of laughed at it.
Yeah.
But not knowing how, when masses have interface with it that it almost seems to converge on the truth. Because
yes, but there's a caveat there too with
yes,
Wikipedia, because a lot of times if you look at Wikipedia, you'll see, how do I say this? You'll see rhetoric that circulates within people that are more motivated to either create, be slanderous towards
right,
somebody or negative towards somebody and paint them in a
yep,
certain light. You'll see a lot of those people, and in layman's terms, a lot of people use the words keyboard warriors, for example, or something like that. These are people that have access and they basically do 100 posts a minute kind of thing, so
yes,
that
yes,
they're
yeah,
on there very actively. It gives a perception that there are a lot of people that are echoing this sentiment, and so you may get it tilted in the favor of those who are um,
not delivering truth.
not delivering truth, but have access and repeated access. And so they may kind of persuade one way or another. And that's no different really than what we do in the marketing world when we're talking about PR and trying to paint a picture of a certain individual or a candidate, for example. So Wikipedia has to be also taken with a grain of salt.
Cool. No, because the reason why I've been using that as an example, it's been with us for a long time, and it was one of the first kind of experiments
Mm-hmm.
that it went beyond an experiment. It actually became almost for many a de facto place to go, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I often think with the AI world that we've almost got another level to be able to take us there to what that integrity truth that you're talking about.
Yeah. Except AI my worry with AI is the micro biases that are there. Like a small bias
Yes, yes,
in AI when
yes,
it's first developed for whatever purpose it's developed for. Just like a golf swing, right? If you hit the ball just slightly off, if it's shifted just a little bit off, the trajectory is going to end up way further away from the hole.
right.
And I think that's the case with AI as well, because and then that brings up the argument about, what happens when it's considered sentient, right? We had this discussion
Right.
before
Yes,
too.
yes, yeah.
And then it's autonomous in making decisions and going in its own path in its own direction, regardless of what we say or do after that. That's, again, these are existential things. But when we're talking about AI as a tool for truth, I think we need to make sure that the platform that we're using AI on, and for whatever purpose we're trying to pull this truth to, we have to have the right governance around that and the right rules and regulations to kind of keep it ethical and keep it correct.
I think those are a couple of the governance part is a very big one to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I also go back to comments that another person made to me is that AI is still the algorithms that go on behind the AI world are still being created by humans.
Yeah. Well,
Or they're
initially,
setups
yeah.
or they can be, I'll call it, recreated by an automation that was created in the AI to develop on its to
Yeah.
say it's this is where the question of sentience always kind of comes
Yeah,
back to
well,
me.
that's the issue with AI is the issue of sentience, right? Like
Yes,
that's what the issue is. If it wasn't an issue of sentience, if it wasn't an issue of artificial intelligence that would begin to think for itself, we would just be talking about a very complex set of algorithms,
right,
a
right.
program, right? It's where it crosses over from a program to self-thinking. That's where, for me, AI becomes we cross that plane and we don't go back. So we have to be really careful about that. That's where my initial things I was writing about and posting about and everything was based upon that threshold right there.
So just this is a little bit of a shout out for you. Where can people read those articles? Are they on LinkedIn or are they
LinkedIn.
on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn. There's some. I think I removed a few because I liked what I was talking about, but things have changed so much. So I want to do like a version 2.0 of some of those
Right.
pieces, but most of the stuff's still out there.
Okay.
A lot of it is in the kind of shadowing like how AI is impacting the marketing world and stuff like that. But it's all a lot of the earlier stuff is talking about the worries and concerns we should have. Not a lot about what we were talking about earlier now, about how we use that to our advantage right now.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm. And that's
So
kind of the new perspective right now.
I was because another individual I had on was had worked at U of T with Jeffrey Hinton.
Okay. Yep.
Who's just who just won the Nobel Prize, right, for his work in AI. He's kind of
Mm-hmm.
seen, I think he's seen as the father of AI. Is that be a stretch?
Mm-hmm.
And it's, to me, it's very interesting to see how those things are developed, like kind of developed. Because I always go back to um, because he talks about a biological um, and a digital intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't learned enough about what he talks about, but it starts to make sense to me, the digital versus biological, because the biological to me is, and I've said this before, we can't even make an atom of like hydrogen, like the first on a periodic table. And I think we struggle with the whole sense of infinity, like
Yeah.
not only going out to the cosmos, but going deep into like this the subatomic level.
Yeah. So
And this
micro and
is
macro. Yeah.
and this is why I'm interested when we go into the sentience part of, because we're kind of talking about the digital world here with AI, right?
Yeah, we're
Again,
talking. Yeah, we're talking. Well, yes, we are. And then the question is, where's our biological intelligence limits, and where do we cross that threshold then to
yes,
join the digital world of it all? And that I mean, again, layman's terms would call that becoming an android, right? Where you're
yeah,
kind of an amalgamation or a creation of both together. And I wonder if that's a future. That's the future of Neuralink. I don't know.
no, I mean, there's many things going down with the idea of Neuralink, right? And it's like that's when you're crossing that line now
Yeah.
between that digital life versus the biological life.
Right.
And historically, we've not done well in that area.
Yeah, yeah, and that again, like that's my area of focus on this whole thing is how, I mean, the technology's there. The technology's there. The technology will become more and more advanced. The
Yes.
technology will become more and more nuanced. The technology will thread out into like almost infinite, if not infinite, areas and development. But no matter what happens with the technology, the question is how do we manage it?
Yes. Yeah. Like
Right,
this
and not
governance.
just, yeah, it's governance, but it's not just localized to our country,
No.
our neighboring countries, our continent. It's global, and we have to figure out how, as a society, like not just a society but as a civilization globally, how do we make sure that one part of the world isn't misusing it, that would create ripple effects across the
Sure.
rest of the world, and again become an existential threat. So there are, works out there now for regulation, different levels and different layers of regulation that they're putting together, frameworks, to kind of start managing this. I know Elon Musk has talked about this, and he believes strongly in having the right regulation in place, even though he's got, Grok and like his own AI stuff
Right.
developing out of X. So my biggest question was with him was, I was thinking, why are you kind of a proponent of AI then if you know that there's a massive existential threat? And I think what I heard him say in certain podcasts or interviews was that we kind of can't leave it to other people somewhere else to kind of decide what the fate
Figure it out
of
for
AI
us.
and humanity is. So now we're supposed to kind of rely on him and his technology to keep us kind of in check. But that's where that governance piece comes into, right? You
Yes.
can't give it
Yes.
all to one person to say, hey, you make all those decisions. We have to be involved in all of these decisions. So now it goes right back to politics again, you see. Um, that's why it's
Yes.
so important. That's why I wanted to have this conversation after the US election.
Well, this is
um,
why, like, and this is kind of brings me right into the next part of this is now we have the Trump administration coming into place. They're getting a fairly clear signal that this is what the U.S. is looking for.
yep.
Have you seen, heard things like dealing with this? I mean, this governance around AI? Like, I mean, if I go back to 2020, 2019, Trump was really the first one to say, I'm going to ban TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah, the banning of TikTok was more centered around, in my understanding, was more centered around the idea that information is being collected, privacy is at risk,
Right,
and it's
right.
being issued back towards a potential CPP controlled um, entity
Mm-hmm.
or government kind of
Right.
agency that's kind of collecting this information. They've had hearings on this. I find it inconclusive. I don't know that that's the case. So that whole banning of TikTok thing is still out there. I'm not too knowledgeable on the nuance, all the little details of what was said during that hearing. But from my understanding, it's still alive and well, TikTok, and
Yeah.
the user base is huge, and the algorithms actually work really well for its reach and everything. And I'm pretty sure Trump and his team are already on there, so everybody's on there.
Yes.
So
Yes.
everyone's using it. So I mean, that's kind of early thought with TikTok. But when it comes to the Trump administration now, the new
Yes.
administration he's
Right.
putting together, this is far different than the 2016 administration. So if listeners probably heard Trump talk about this on podcasts, on interviews, because he probably set a record for the number of appearances made by a presidential candidate during a campaign. I mean,
You just said something that I think is kind of under recognized is his work ethic
yeah,
is unbelievable.
78 years old,
Like,
901 rallies during this campaign.
and
And
you
then
did the podcasts and the interviews
three
that,
over 3 hours with Joe Rogan, right? Was it? I think it was over 3 hours with Joe Rogan.
yeah, no, it's
I
like,
think he did the Nelk Boys. He did an interview with Aiden Ross. He did all of these influencers online. Like he would go and do that. And you know what's really interesting? His son Baron, who's his youngest son and also his tallest son, I think he's like
yes,
6'9",
yeah,
6'9". Apparently, he's quite a gifted kid. He's going to university now. I think he's just starting, but he is Trump's youngest son, and he urged Donald Trump to go on the Joe Rogan podcast. He urged him to
Oh,
go on
really?
these channels. Yeah, so he urged his dad to be relevant, get out here. And again, this is funny because he's not really that Barron Trump, his son, is not part of the campaign.
No, no.
He's not lining up interviews and things like that for Donald Trump or rallies. Yet he said, quote unquote, actually, I don't know what he said per se, but what he would have said was something to the effect of, Dad, you need to get on this podcast with Joe Rogan. Look at his listener base.
Yeah.
You need to go on this one here and this one here, because he sees what's relevant to the younger voting crowd, right? And
Yes.
so in our marketing world, we would look at that and say, why wouldn't you be doing this? Every candidate should be doing this. And so Trump took that and he brought it to the campaign, and they did that. And I think that was a huge win in understanding where your base is and where your reach can go. And again, I think his stamina to be able to do this long and go on these podcasts and become relevant in a like you're talking about hosts that are like 18 to 25 years old, and this guy's 78 years old, but he's relevant to so many people, and I think that resonated and connected for him. So again, smart move. But we're talking about a billionaire.
Yeah.
We're talking about a very good business person, somebody who's done quite well in business, whether people want to argue his ethics or whatever it is. I mean, right. I don't know. I've studied his deals, again, from my real estate background. I've studied them for 20 years. There are certain things that I've seen a lot of developers do very similarly that have, bothered people, but it's within the rules, it's within the guidelines. The tax benefits, for example, he takes advantage of those, and he clearly says that. So you can hate the way he's done things, but he's successful in doing them, and he's worked within the lines, right? So stamina, he's got the know-how, he's got the experience, and then it just comes back to 2016, where when he won for the first time, he said, I surrounded myself with the wrong people.
Yes.
I surrounded myself with the people that I was advised to surround myself with when I walked into the Oval Office, basically. And they said, you should pick this person for that. You should pick this person for that. I think there's like 10,000 people you have to
that's what he said on the Rogan series.
Yeah. You have to,
unbelievable.
It makes sense. It's the United States government, right? But this time around, he's done something different. And I think it really helped I think he alluded to doing this in some of his actions at his rallies and announcements. I think he did something far different than he did in 2016. And I think that helped really win the undecided voter, the independents, is he brought Bobby Kennedy Jr. over, which was huge.
Yeah.
He brought him in and said that he wants him to run the Make America Healthy Again campaign, bring it
Okay.
over, and he would give him free reign on that. And he brought Tulsi Gabbard over, who was a prominent Democrat from Hawaii before, and she's got a great fan base and she's got her head on her shoulders. I think she's a strong candidate for president herself one day, right?
Wow.
So then he brings, he's got so many people. He brings Elon Musk over all of a sudden, and Elon Musk is going to be in charge of efficiency. Look at what he did with Twitter and turn it into X. Talk about efficiency,
Well,
right?
when you said that it's become the de facto news social media
Yeah.
platform,
Yeah.
like I'd like I don't want to sound naive, but I wonder how many people actually even know that. Because like I often will only hear kind of negative stuff, and they've lost their
Yeah.
advertising dollars, and since he took it over, all this, and I'm kind of going, I've not heard that before.
Yeah. So he's the first one that'll announce it on X over and over. So you
No
follow
doubt.
Elon Musk on
Yes.
X, but he's not wrong. He's just quoting the facts. These are the facts. They show the research. It's all there.
No, no,
Elon
I
Musk has too much to lose by
sure.
lying about anything, especially on his platform there. So
He's also the only owner of a platform that has the most followers of his own platform,
true. Yeah.
which is kind of interesting too.
That's what Donald Trump wanted to do with Truth Social, his own Donald Trump's own social
Yes.
media brand. But I found that interesting that he wouldn't just kind of go back on X when Elon Musk took over and just
Right.
use that platform. But all his stuff did get reposted to X anyway. So they were really smart about the strategy they ran. But all of this is just to say Donald Trump ran on a party platform that had very clear policies about how to fix what's wrong with the country and has gone wrong in the last 4 years. I think the majority, and not I think, we see the majority of people in the country, the popular vote, went to Donald Trump because they agree with that. They agree with the state of America right now and what it should be. And like, for example, the border, fixing the border. That is a big problem. That is unprecedented. What's going on needs to be fixed. Kamala Harris, 4 years in power, didn't even bother to fix it. She could have, and she said she would fix it if she was elected. Well, why can't you fix it right now? That's the most common question asked about it, and she has no answer for it.
Yes.
So again, people started to see Trump has his best interests. His interests are aligned with the best interests of that of the nation. And so on the policies, which he had launched a long time earlier in his campaign, far before Kamala Harris had any policies even posted on her website, he had them all outlined and he's never changed them. That's what he wants to run on. Then you got guys like Elon Musk, you got Dana White, all these like people that are in the media coming in and saying, we agree with this. And then you've got senators saying, you know what, that makes sense. You've got people, Democrats agreeing with that and switching parties to come over to the Republican side to support that. So clearly he's kind of focused on what needs to be fixed. And in order to do that, he's changed his position on just putting career politicians in place to help him do it. He's bringing people with the common sense ideology, right? A common sense approach to fix this country as a collective agenda. And I think when you see the Harris conceded and you saw, Biden give his speech, I think it was today.
Yeah.
The idea now is handing over the reins in a peaceful transition because they know that's what the American people want and they want common sense.
Did you not find that interesting that, like, again, it's the news reports, but the Kamala Harris, doing the conceding and then Biden, like, it was like
two separate people.
Yeah,
it was two separate parties.
It was we're going back for a recount. Like,
yeah,
it was to me, like, that's what made me think this has been very solid because you're not hearing that at all, right? Like, they stole it. They, like, you didn't hear that. You're saying,
well, like Hillary Clinton was going on about in 2016.
Yes, yeah,
and then when Trump said, this is the election was stolen in 2020. Yes. Hillary Clinton and everybody else was saying, look at why are you saying that? What are you doing? Well, I mean, you guys did the same thing 4 years ago. Like, it's just this cat and mouse thing. But now what I think we're seeing is, I think that the Democrats, and you can see that in some of the senators and their speeches and some of the other politicians on the Democratic side coming out and actually saying they ran a better campaign. The people just wanted them. And what can you argue with there? I mean, it's pretty clear. He's sitting at 297 electoral votes. You need 270. And he's going to probably end with 312. If not, he's probably already got 303 right now with Nevada. So it's a decisive victory.
Yes, I would
And
agree.
the fact that he took Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, that blue wall, that was the deal breaker. I think once they saw that going, they realized like we can't even contest this. He's got the popular vote. We can't contest that. It's a red wave. He's got over 300 electoral votes coming, and he's got the Senate now flipped to a Republican majority.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. And if the House does it, I think at last I checked this morning, the House was 12 seats away or less. I think 12 seats away maybe from a majority as well.
Wow,
That's why Donald Trump in his victory speech said this is going to be a golden age for America, and he wants to heal the country, put away the divisiveness and the bipartisanship, and or partisanship, sorry, and he wants to focus on these things to help build everybody back up. That unity discussion, yes. And then just to mention, I should say the next day, this morning.
It's been a long day.
Yeah, is it today? But anyways, the stock market skyrocketed 1,000 points, yeah. And we knew that was going to happen when Trump got in. It wouldn't have happened if Kamala Harris got in.
No, it's very and then the other part of it, sense.
The tech community. This is a big one, especially from where I sit. The tech community is rallying around this Trump administration. They see Elon Musk connected in. They see that Trump is saying, yes, we need to really push technology forward, and we want to become the tech kind of epicenter of the world. Now, that doesn't just mean Bitcoin and blockchain. Right. That doesn't just mean SpaceX, right? That means it means applying technology in all aspects of what we need. Again, back to what I was saying originally: housing, medical, food, and we've got Bobby Kennedy Jr. now dealing with the whole food thing. So there's so many pieces of this puzzle that Trump is putting together that it's a no-brainer for the tech community, at least, to say, hey, this is going to be a real golden age of this country.
Well, I was going to say, let's hope that's where it's going. What I was going to ask is, how do you think this will impact us?
I think for the next year, negatively.
Do you think we'll have a PM change?
Yes. Yeah. I do. I think that's kind of the writing's been all over the wall for a while now. Yeah. I think Trudeau, I'm not a fan. And I think he's really taken this country in a direction that it shouldn't be going or shouldn't have gone. I think he's made alliances that have hurt the country. I think that there's a strong movement towards the Conservative Party right now to kind of get things moving in a different direction. But in saying that, I should, Pierre Poilievre's a very, very, very strong candidate for Prime Minister. I personally think he should win. I think that he should be the Prime Minister of this country, but I say that with a kind of a cautionary expectation. I think whoever the Prime Minister is going to be, I don't consider Justin Trudeau a Prime Minister. I don't think he displays any good leadership qualities whatsoever. I am highly critical of what he's done. I don't know him as a person, again, but of his actions, of his policies, of his kind of the way he has skipped answering questions in Parliament. Like he just dances around everything. He doesn't give a straight answer at all. There's no straight answer. I don't think he's a good leader. But whoever the leader will be as a Prime Minister, I think that they're going to be faced with a very difficult task in ripping off a Band-Aid economically in this country. And beyond economics, they're going to have a task of dealing with some demographic issues that we've recently encountered in terms of immigration. Yep. We have a broken system with this temporary foreign worker visa thing. That was a joke. I'll speak out on that. I'll say that that was really a mistake. Right. Then all of a sudden he turns around and says, we're going to ship 70,000 immigrants back. Well, wow. It's making a mess. So whoever comes into power in Canada is going to have to deal with ripping the Band-Aid off of what's been wrong all these years. Right. Fixing our inflation crisis we're in, our housing crisis we're in, our immigration crisis we're in, our GDP problem we have. Okay. And we're not doing much for production. And then on top of all that, we got to deal with what this MCA or the what used to be the NAFTA deal was that Trump had changed when he was in. So now we're going to see a very strong U.S. We're going to see a very strong U.S. dollar. Okay, and our dollar is going to be weakened
It's
at
going to
least for
hit
the
us
next
for
year.
sure.
Yep. Yep.
So they're like, we already know there's not a good relationship between Trump and Trudeau. I mean, that was
Yes.
demonstrated, what, 5 years ago, just
Oh,
in house.
and in a tweet by Donald Trump,
Yes.
he just called him out as he did. Yeah.
And to me, with what you've kind of described of this, and what we're seeing, right? I mean, you've kind of described what has happened in the last 2 days with regards to the election,
Yep.
and how it'll be important, being their northern neighbor, their much smaller northern neighbor, of being able to connect up with that in a
But Doug,
positive way, right?
yeah, but you got to remember we're a resource
Yes. Oh, yes.
rich
Absolutely.
neighbor,
Yeah.
and the policies under this government have been to really squash that, much like what the Biden administration has done in America to get them down to their knees.
Right.
So with Trump coming in and dealing with oil and exports and American production, manufacturing, it's going to really, really change the landscape. It's going to strengthen the country. I think in Canada, until we start doing things like that as well, economically, we're going to be pretty weak.
Do you think we'll piggyback off of some, like, obviously right now, like the 1,000 point gain in the stock market, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But do you see? I might not even just mention Canada, but even the world. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like the U.S. has come back and said, we're going to be a little bit more together than we've been.
Yeah, I think
We want you to
I
make
think it's
note of
going to be.
this.
I think Trump has alluded to, and perhaps even in his victory speech, um, I think he alluded to the idea that it's going to be America first for a while, for the first couple of years at least. I think that's what he said, something to
Hmm.
that effect. So I
Hmm.
think what that means is that he's going to fix things at home before focusing on the rest of the
The
world.
world, yeah,
I think the only thing on the rest of the world that he's going to focus on right away is keeping peace and not having wars. So
right,
ending
right,
the Ukraine-Russia conflict, ending the Israel-Hamas conflict. I think those and keeping North Korea in check,
yeah.
keeping China at bay. Like all of these things are going to happen immediately. But aside from that, in terms of
Hmm.
trade that benefits other nations and props them up, I think is going to be second to rebuilding internally what he's doing in the USA. I think that's his primary agenda, and he alluded to that in the speech by saying the next couple of years is going to have to be
Be
focused on America
us.
first, which makes sense. You can't save somebody else if you haven't established your situation.
It's the
We do that in
fundamental thing on an airplane, right?
airplane, exactly same thing. So I don't see the argument there. I don't see a counter argument there. But the question you're saying is like, will we see kind of a positive effect globally, economically? Right? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, no, more so as far as even leadership goes. Like,
Yeah.
the reason why I kind of go back on this a little bit, and I know it's quite different in a sense, but recently saw brought back the history of the Reagan administration
Yep.
in the Reagan movie, and Reagan would say a lot of things that were his story, not based on this is what I want to see, and
Mm-hmm.
this is kind of what I see Trump kind of
Yeah.
in that, in
Trump is.
essence.
Yeah. Trump pays a lot of respect to Reagan. Like he's running on Reagan's America Great Again. Right. Like that's the whole
Oh, okay.
campaign. Right. That's his whole thing. And in the what was it, 87, like that era with Reagan, America was
Oh,
standing
oh,
so tall.
yes.
It was a powerhouse, yes, but it was like the world benefited from that. They spread the
That's what the movie
democracy
showed.
in the right way. Yeah, but
Like
I mean, you can remember the 80s, like at that in that
I
range.
remember the
That,
fuel crisis, right? Like I remember
mhm.
the aviator, like the air traffic controllers. That's the single biggest one I said. So like, well, they have a
Mhm.
contract, don't they? Well, then let them go.
Mhm.
Like, who
Yeah,
says that?
yeah, yeah.
Like that's almost
And,
unimaginable in today's world, right?
yeah, yeah. But I think today with Trump's administration, if all goes well in the way his intentions are likely to be, he's bringing in people to keep things in terms of checks and balances, to
Hmm.
keep the right people focused on the right goals. I think in 2016 you had a lot of stuff going on, like with what happened with Mike Flynn and and with different people being kind of tossed around and getting lost in the mix of everything and being slandered in the media, and then Trump not knowing who do you put here, who do you put there. He brings his family in. People are screaming nepotism and all this other kind of stuff. And I think at this time around, I think he's very clear on who he's bringing in and what they stand for and how to vet them properly.
He seems to learn from his mistakes. To me, I mean,
Yeah,
this
I
is
think,
one of like
I think any real estate developer does. I'll tell you that.
There you go.
Yeah,
because it's
any real estate developer does.
He mentioned even in the Rogan podcast with regards to he's not a politician.
Yeah.
And so he's a businessman that's come in, and everyone he was looking at were lifetime politicians. And he said
that's their career, that's their paycheck.
And he said many times I made bad decisions based on that. Like who even ever says they had bad decisions, right? Like
well, I think that's the funny part about Trump is like people accuse him of being dishonest, and I think there are times where he's told truthful hyperboles, as the author of his famous book, The Art of the Deal, said, right? I think he's guilty of that, but I think at the same time he's also sometimes he's very, very honest to a fault. Like he'll throw himself under the bus by certain statements he makes, but I mean, that's who he is. He's an independent, really. He's not really a Republican. He needed the Republican base to get on the map. But he's really he's an independent that works on common sense. He knows how to run a business really well, so he's going to run the country like a business. But he's bringing the right people in to handle other aspects of the other areas of governance, to handle things that are less business-like, right? Mm-hmm. So now I think he's going to have a smarter administration this time around. And I really think it's going to be a golden age for America. I really do. I think interest rates are going to come down for America. I think inflation is going to come down.
They announced that today.
25%, 25 basis point cut today.
Yeah.
I think it's still going to move down. I think 1,000 points on the stock market is just a taste of what I think is going to happen. Because now that he has this quote unquote super majority coming, I think we're going to see unprecedented achievement and growth for the country in the next 4 years. But back to technology,
yes,
he's got the tech community in the United States rallying around this, because they know now that they could be at the forefront of innovation in America again and making America the #1 place in the world for technology and innovation.
This actually comes right back full circle to what we started with: housing and healthcare and food, right? And we know, and I've had too many people on that we know we have the technology to help solve a lot of these issues.
Yep.
And maybe this is now we've got the leader in place that can help bring that technology now into where it needs to be to solve these, rather than pretending to do that and scooping a lot of the profits along the way, right? Like this is the part that I think that hopefully will change, because for the longest time it's follow the money. Well,
and that's what Elon Musk has been saying. He's saying, look at previous administration and administrations in the Barack Obama's administration years. We don't know where the money went. There's nothing to show for, but the money was spent. It's very similar to what we see with Justin Trudeau's administration up here. It's in Canada. It's terrible. Like the what was it called? The app. For
the coming into Canada.
What was it called again? I can't even remember. It was terribly marketed. But I mean, was it a $5 billion spend on that or something crazy, or $1 billion? I can't remember. Yeah. And it was an app that would have cost tens of thousands, maybe. And where did the rest of the money go? It's one of those things where you have that government efficiency with somebody like Elon Musk stepping in and saying, we can build an organization or an administration, not administration, but we can build an agency around this to kind of keep an eye on things and make it public at all times and transparent, so that the voters and not just the voters, the American civilians can see where that money's going. If we have that type of transparency, this is what I said on the last podcast too.
Yes.
Then we also have the ability to see where the funds are being allocated and to what, right? So again, with technology, where are we spending the money to do what? Are we doing it to help affordable homes and housing? Yes. Are we doing it to help with food shortages and crises? Are we doing it to help with our medical systems? I mean, in the States, I think all of that is now a real potential with this administration.
No, it's an exciting thing to look at it in that sense. I mean, you go back to the example even of Elon starting his SpaceX, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the amount of money he took out of what it took to build a rocket ship from
Yeah.
NASA's world,
Yeah.
like they were like a hundredth of the cost. It was like
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yep.
And if he hadn't done that, he couldn't do what they're doing, right?
Right. Exactly. That's the thing. He understands resource allocation. He understands how to, with whatever resources you have. What he said, he's a materials engineer too, right? I think that's what his actual thing is, and he says it in terms of viability. It's got to be the least amount of whatever you need, the least necessary components to achieve the goal,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that's
No, it's
efficiency. That's
always.
efficiency as
It's
by
always.
definition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's out.
So I
It's
think,
always that. So
yeah. So again, you got Donald Trump who recognizes that in him and sees what he did with Twitter to make X super efficient, and with SpaceX, of course, and all his other businesses too. So he's got the right person there to look at efficiency for the government spending. That's huge. And Bobby Kennedy Jr., you've got somebody that's a
yes.
lifelong advocate for healthy children and
Yes.
healthy
Yes.
people in general. And he's been, he's sued. I think he sued Monsanto and all these
Yes.
big pharma, not pharma, yeah, big pharma. He sued all these guys,
Yeah.
and I mean, he's the right person to have there too, right? So, I mean,
It's interesting
it's
how
kind of
this
a dream
stuff
team,
is. Yeah, it's like how this stuff is kind of bubbling up, right? That you're
right?
starting to, and I think part of it has come out of the long form way that some of these podcasts are set up, right? I mean,
Yeah,
Robert Kennedy Jr.
yeah,
being out revealing the things that are going on in Big Pharma. We just had Casey and Callie Means on talking
yes,
about it.
yeah,
They've done the podcast tour, I think, and it's like there's a way of bubbling these things up, and that's to me this long format,
mm-hmm.
and that's why it was interesting with Trump being on Rogan was the fact that you can go for a certain while doing a fake and act. But
Yeah.
after a while, you just get wore down and you start to see the real person in a way.
I think that's why Kamala Harris told Joe Rogan she would only do 1 hour, and he would have to go there, and there were limitations on what were to be asked, and Joe Rogan refused that because he's authentic. He wants the
Yeah,
truth, right?
no. I mean, that's his whole goal, right? I mean, whether you're talking moonshots or you're talking pharma,
Mm-hmm.
those are all the things that are kind of there. So it's exciting.
Yeah.
Listen, this has been another amazing discussion to me, and
Yep.
on where we're going and where we go next. Right? I'm really interested in this idea of how they deal with the governance of.
Yes.
Because I
AI.
mean, with AI, as you like, I get excited by what it's available, but I like there's always the other side of what could be created,
Exactly.
and like I said, I'll hold to you with the healthcare, food, and housing because I think that was a great way of being able to capture them, and maybe we're going to see that come out of. It'd be great to see that come out of all that we've spent the last 4 years in.
Mm-hmm.
5 years, kind of like as far as this, and maybe we'll see something that comes out and that's a real positive way for humankind to
Well, I
kind
think
of to move on.
just on that point, Doug, I think that a new government in Canada would probably recognize how positive that change could be by looking at maybe what's going to happen in the U.S. But they'll
Mm-hmm.
probably want to employ that up in Canada too. And I think that a good government that would hear its constituents would be looking at that as a focus.
No, I think so. I think so too. So I think that's actually a great place to stop this time.
Yeah.
We covered all the things that we wanted to talk about today, and I think you did a great job of being able to go through the American election because I think it's done, right? It's like it's been called, it's been done. You can
Mm-hmm.
go back and say what was all wrong and all that kind of stuff, but they're moving forward, and whether we like it or not, the U.S. is still kind of the country of the world, right? That everybody's
Mm-hmm.
watching very, very closely, us included. So, with that, anything you want to end with? Kind of
I
sentiments
think
you.
I love being on the podcast. This is great.
Oh, I love having you
It
as a
always seems to be
guest.
getting better, and like every time, it's more fun. So I always look forward to speaking with you and jumping on here. And if anybody out there wants to kind of continue the conversation or reach out to me directly, they can. They can reach me on LinkedIn. So at official Aman Azad, I believe that's my LinkedIn handle. But you can just look me up.
We'll post
AMAN.
it on the description too.
Yeah, AMAN AZAD. And then on I'm on I'm on X a lot now as well. So
Oh,
if
okay.
anyone out there is on X, you can find me at it's at Aman Azad, AmanAzadX.
Right on. So
Yeah,
say that one more time on X.
on X it's at
At
AmanAzad. That's Aman Azad X at the end. So Aman Azad X.
I think we may actually put that in the description because I was
That
going
would
to
be
say
good.
that just to have the discourse, right? I mean, going back and looking at some of the papers and the things that you're thinking about and where we're going, because
Yeah,
I think some of those things have actually reflected where we are. And
yeah.
that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, LinkedIn would have that. So LinkedIn would be better for that stuff. And X is more kind of a political thing.
Yeah, so I was going to say, well,
So
thank you for kind of informing us. Like it's the number one news social media platform. That's a
that's
very
great.
cool thing to see what's happening. And with that, I think thank you for listening. We'll be back again with another episode, but this has been a terrific one with Aman Azad from AMG Analytics, and thanks again for being part of it. With
Yeah,
that, let's say goodbye.
thanks, Doug.
If you stay on just a second here. Are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not.